One of the reasons we are all here on this gorgeous Earth planet is to navigate and understand relationships. Relationships and their dynamics are honestly as unique as the individuals that have elected into it. And I'm going to define relationships in all the ways. So it could be partnership, it could be marriage, it could be a business relationship, it could be friendship, family, or it could be an interconnected network of relationships. So, extended groups of friends, extended groups of humans who come together for a variety of reasons. So, essentially, no relationship is safe. They are all included for the sake of this discussion. And our relationships, in navigating them and understanding them, in better connecting with them, is also imperative, critical, so important to our spiritual growth or lack thereof. Depending on who we surround ourselves with or choose to be around, we instantly create, it's almost like kind of like a little mesh, a network of who we are and what the energies that kind of surround us nurture. So imagine like a greenhouse. Your greenhouse and the exact temperature and the exact sun position, or maybe even not sun position, is what it nurtures in that environment and what it ultimately allows to grow or not grow within you. As I was channeling my guides, we were talking through some difficulties and challenges that I'm currently going through with a variety of relationships. And understanding this precious, if I'm very honest, beautiful understanding about sacred math in relationships. And I would love to dive into this, despite it being a little bit more complex, to illuminate some clarity as well as compassion for all of us on the journey of relationships. The key fundamental here that I want to just echo from my heart to yours, that's so crucial, is that connections, and especially our more intimate connections, so intimacy as in closeness, it could be emotional, it could be physical, etc. Our most intimate connections, they are all not just emotional. They are also energetic. And they are governed by divine laws. They must follow the laws of the universe. So what I'm about to share is not about judgment. It's about illumination, understanding, and ultimate balance or harmony. My guides opened first in sharing about the energies that exist in relationships. They shared. And this is not desperation need. This is not demand need. This is the law of cause and effect, the balance, the karmic balance, if you will, of the energy needed. Imagine, we'll keep it simple, two people coming together. They are bringing with them a certain energy, a frequency, a field. And each one of them, there might be some deep resonance, let's say. So I'm just going to go very linear on this. To understand that they are on the same vibrational frequency. So they are bringing and amplifying basically each other's energies. Or there could be ones that are very different. So one is bringing a lot of higher vibrational energy and light. The other is heavier, denser, and has dulled their light down. So there's more of a representation of darkness. And as my guides went through describing essentially these different levels, they gave me something that, of course, I immensely appreciate, because of course they are appeasing my left brain in almost like a sacred math equation or metaphor. So they started to open up and say that we have, let's say, this square, this doorway. And I know it's not a typical doorway, but this is a magical doorway. So we could have someone who has, let's say, a 10 by 10 opening. And let's say that's the person with all of that light that I was just describing. And then the other person who has dimmed their light, maybe they are at a 1 by 1. So we can tell already the dynamic that is created between them. Or in my earlier example, two beings, two people who are very similar, Maybe they are both 10 by 10 or both 1 by 1. What happens is that when we see this as a sacred math equation metaphor of 10 by 10 and 10 by 10, we're going to see that there's a lot of resonance, that there's a lot of things that both agree to and see. Maybe they see eye to eye on things. But what I want to say is that each one of these little squares, these openings, can also shift and change depending on the topic, the energy essentially of the relationship. So if the relationship is more, let's say, platonic and it's strictly focused on a hobby versus a relationship where it's totally interdimensional. We've got a relationship, we've got a commitment, let's say it's a marriage, we've got family, we have building a family. So we have all these energetic squares of dynamics that can then bring the complexity to our relationships. So it's more quantity based on those energetic pathways of commitment. But what we don't see and instead we feel is when these things become imbalanced. So if we have a 10 by 10, two people, both 10 by 10, there's a lot of vibrational resonance, but maybe eventually there's not a ton of growth. Because maybe they're just kind of hanging out. They're kind of stagnant. It just feels just a little too familiar. Or maybe one's 11 by 11, one's 10 by 10. So they're pretty darn similar. We also can shift and change depending on our choices. Hello, free will. So maybe the 10 by 10 now becomes 12 by 12. So now we're in a 12 by 12 and 11 by 11 relationship. So things continue to ebb and flow. Our ego, says that, okay, what are you? Identify yourself. Okay, 10 by 10. All right, I'm putting a 10 by 10 label on your forehead and that's it. And I'm never labeling you again. Okay, I'll see you when I see you. Like, wait, what? That's not realistic. And I think this is where relationship dynamics start to change. The sacred math metaphor in the equation, if you will, starts to then shift or change. Yet in our egoic mind, we feel, we think, we guess, we know that nothing changes. Oh, but my friends, it does. And of course, my guides had to bring back the beautiful metaphor of the Superconscious River. And for those of you that have not heard that episode, I will be sure to link that in the show notes for you. Essentially, we are all in our little boats and we're on the Superconscious River. And my guides then went on, as I channeled, to share about when there are differences or essentially mismatches, misalignments, discrepancies between these two, let's keep it at two beings. If we're doing 10 by 10 and 1 by 1, there's almost a critical compassionate nuance that we can all tell, seeing 10 by 10 and 1 by 1, that this is not balanced. But it doesn't make it bad. It simply has a different foundation, a different function, and a different capacity. Here's what my guides shared first. Is it supportive? Yes. Can it be fruitful? Yes. This means it is not irrelevant, but it is not sustainable for the degree, the consistency of the journey down the river. So this is where, for me, things shifted in my mind. Because if we're imagining that we're all floating on this superconscious river, and we can choose whatever relationships we want. And again, depending on the partnership level, let's see it like this, the depth of commitment, whether this is just my friend who I see once a month, or this is my in-house living life partner. The depth of commitment is going to be different. So there's going to be a lot more squares in the ladder, in that in-home living partner who is committed to my life and I'm committed to their life. There are so many more energetic connections. But because there's a disconnect doesn't mean that it's bad or that it's not fruitful or it's not helpful. It's just looking at the sustainability and ultimately the impact for the journey. And instantly I began to think about marriage, the institutional marriage, getting married to this person who then becomes your lifelong husband or wife. And they are there with you through sickness and in health. You start to think about the vows and these commitments. And I am not under any circumstances bashing it or thinking that it's not right. No, it is beautiful and it is sacred. And for those that choose that experience, incredibly amazing. But what I will say is that the one thing I do wish could be or added on or just a little addendum to the more traditional marriage commitment is that there is choice. There is freedom. There is continued expansion. There also could be continued contraction should someone choose. And then when we're looking at the journey, the life journey, okay, if we have this couple that's married, let's say we have a husband and a husband, okay? They are married and the first husband, let's say so full of light, he's the 10 by 10. He has so many things he wants to do in his life experience. He has a whole plethora of things that he's excited about. And he marries his husband, who he feels he needs to rescue, who is not a 10 by 10, is a 2 by 2. But maybe in the love category, it's a 10 by 10, it's an equal match. Or maybe in the commitment category, it's a 10 by 10, it's an equal match. But for the growth, for the aspirations, for the evolution, we're looking at a 10 by 10 and a 2 by 2. And if we're looking at this adventure down this river, this life river of all these different experiences, and there's rapids and there's things and there's places of still water and calm water and then wild water and waterfalls, right? There's just a variety. These can cause tension or cause illumination between these mathematical equations. So maybe in that exact moment of love, they're both at 10 by 10, everything's good. Even though you're going through all these rapids and it's massively intense. But then you get to the still water part. And then this is about growth. It's time. Okay, now that things have calmed down, now it's time to grow. And the 10 by 10 husband is like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do this. And the 2 by 2 husband's like, no. What happens then? And I think we feel this tension in this example. We feel the mathematical tension. We feel the formula mismatch. We feel the leakage, or in many cases, we feel the control. We feel the need for control because if I'm the 10 by 10 husband, I want to grow. But if I'm the 2 by 2 husband, I do not want to grow yet, or I'm not ready to grow, or that is not my choice, or I did a lot of growing and I'm tired. And we start to cause the separation. It starts to cause our boats to no longer in these places come together, but instead separate. What's so interesting is that my guides then started to just beautifully elaborate on why it's not sustainable. Because of course our literal mind is like, well, it's just a mismatch. Well, but they've got matching equations in other categories. So now what do you do? It's about seeing the complete commitment picture. And this is that addendum that I wish was on the marriage contract, that I wish was on every partnership contract, and that knowing if there are more areas, more energetic freeways, passageways, highways, connections between two beings, there's just more math. There's more equations. There's more things to look at in the collective picture. But this is where I believe the phrase, if you love something, set it free, comes from. Is in these cases, there are instances of these equations that might not be balanced and might not be fruitful for both parties. And the reality that maybe it is only one equation out of 20, but that one equation is a non-negotiable. Going back to the husbands, for that first husband, the 10 by 10, it is a non-negotiable. And maybe at the time they overlooked it. Maybe at the time they didn't weigh it as such. Or maybe over time they start to understand how important it is and it's become a non-negotiable. That is evolution and change. And what my guides had brought up in a couple of different relationships in my life, there was some expansion that I was desiring to do, that is within me, that I want to do, that I'm being called to do, that the relationships that surrounded me were not supporting me. And it didn't mean that the person or the people in this case were not supporting me or not supportive. They absolutely were. But in the case of this committed relationship, this partnership, this exchange of energy, it was not reciprocal. We all know that in any circumstance, because, maybe we're tired or we're not paying attention or something, it's not completely 100% balanced. But in the aggregate, it's in the same ballpark. And this was a really tough thing to see. They basically shared that for those that were in my life that had the smaller, let's say, capacity, so the 2x2, the imbalanced energy could simply not support the entirety of, in my case, my soul's mission. Here's how they expanded on that. It can only get you through one little leg, one little arm. It is not for the whole body, the whole journey. The raging river that goes into the ocean, it is not for that. And I sat there for a moment, and what I internalized was these relationships that I was inquiring about were for one leg or one arm of my journey. They were for that purpose. And I think we put up barriers and requirements and rules for what relationships should be and what they need to be. And if I'm very honest, we have no idea. We think we do. We have no idea. But imagine if I'm trying to take a relationship, a friendship that I think is supposed to be for life. And really, it's only supposed to serve me and this other person, this other being, for only one arm, one leg, one little jaunt of the journey. If I kept them in there, if I didn't let them go, and I made them go through that rushing, raging river going into the ocean part, that's not fair. And as my guides ended up explaining, because for me, I was like, wow, this is very stark. This is very clear. There are consequences to also these commitments that we've made. And sometimes understanding that we must set things free. That it's not that we ever didn't wish it could have lasted, because of course we did, but we don't understand the bigger picture of why we have these relationships. And trying to force an unsustainable connection to do the work of a sustainable one is basically what we're trying to do because of something that our ego tells us we have to have. Because what at the end of the day is it? Is it failure? No, because you're setting the other person free, you're setting yourself free. In my case, I am releasing the control. I am releasing the need to control. I am letting go. Okay, it means that I failed, or it means that I didn't do something. Those are labels. Those are things my ego is trying to define to make sense of the situation. But what I'm being shared and told, literally, what's being shared with me is that there is a purpose, and this might not be the intentional purpose that I had set my heart to. And if I love these other people in my life, as much as I need to be free to do what I came here to do, I also need to set them free. And they even went on to say, because of course I inquired in my mind, well, so what would happen? Like, what happens in these cases if we're holding a non-sustainable, unsustainable connection to the benchmark, if you will, of a sustainable one? And they said very frankly, it would drown. The connection would drown. And imagine too, and this is where kind of the next progressive thought of, if I let that person go, they're able to then continue on their river and their journey where they may need someone else to help them take them through the next leg. And that I'm not the appropriate person to do so. Because what would happen in this case is that it would impact them and it would impact me. Even though it is painful to say goodbye, it's not easy. And in many cases, because we haven't talked a lot about this, I think as a society, in culture, we don't know how to handle it. So oftentimes in having these conversations, which I've learned firsthand, again, it takes a lot of advocacy. It takes a lot of love, but others don't know how to receive it. And so for me, I've been navigating the minutia, if you will, of sharing and disclosing these things, but also allowing people to exit my life. Because I question, and if we're looking, beyond the belief of that we have these relationships and they're permanent for life, says who and why? How did this come about? It's contemplating for yourself what belief you hold. And for me, I had to look at my own beliefs. For myself, I went through ending a second marriage. If ending the first one wasn't enough, now I am ending a second one. And what does this mean for me? And you may be thinking and receiving this information, something about me. You may be feeling nothing. You may feel related to me in some way. Maybe you've gone through 2 or 3 or 4 or beyond. What I believe is that our culture tells us what to think. We don't ask ourselves what we think. It has allowed me to also look at my friendships. What deems someone as my friend? What is friendship to me? What level of intimacy do I get into, even with my friendships? How much do I share about my life? Why do I share about my life? I realize that all relationships are on the same level. It's just the depth of commitment that then creates these partnerships. But this is also where, too, I do believe it's about creating and defining your own relationships and not just going along with whatever should be, whatever somebody else thinks. Because here's what I know, based on my own free will, I am not going to force my partner, my friend, my best friend to be in a certain type of relationship and committed, what have you, with me because I said so. Because that would be me infringing on their rights. And for me, I love them. I want to set them free so that they are not obligated to be forced to do these things with me. It's one thing if it's choice, but through conversation, you start to see the pathways illuminate. And as my guides were sharing, you get into this situation where your boats are just separate and you realize that you're pretty far away. And in trying to come back together, it takes a certain energy and it takes, time, if you want to say it like that. But what is the cost of that? And who is it impacting and how? It's a lot of questioning, a lot of invitation to contemplate belief in these situations, especially when it comes to relationships. But the last thing that they shared with me that I want to share with you as well is realizing that when we have deeper relationships, deeper human connections, the reason why we cling to these models, I will call them models, so marriage or best friends or close friend or insert term here, even though your soul knows it's imbalanced. So inside your ego, your pride, or maybe even because of fear, you don't want to not commit because, it might mean that you're heartless and ruthless, or you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you don't want to end the relationship because you're not sure what would happen. Would you receive the same support? Like, we go through all this minutia, even though maybe we can feel deep down inside. And that's what I would encourage you in kind of part 2 of in moment of contemplation is, what do you believe about this relationship that you're in? Think about the relationships that you're in. What do you believe? You might be in love with this person, love everything about this person. But this person in a committed relationship with you is not what you want or need in this moment of now. And my guides spoke directly to the core of this and inviting all of us to choose, because this is about expansion. As much as we might see it as cutting off, it's really about cutting ties to set free for expansion. Here's what they shared. That would be by choice, because you are grasping, clasping, holding on for dear life to the model that you feel is supporting your human, but is not supporting your soul. And just a small side note, if you can hear Bailey snoring, she's over there snoring. I apologize. But in this moment of contemplation, I want to invite you to think about one thing. There can be a difference between supporting you as a human and supporting your soul through those relationships, through those commitments, depending on when you made them, where you were when you made them. Think about when you first committed to that friendship or you first committed to that partnership or that marriage. Who were you and who are you now? If you weren't in that relationship, if you didn't go on that journey, would there be any difference? What things have allowed you to ebb and flow and grow and expand? And there's contraction sometimes too. My guides described it, that there is a difference of supporting your human and supporting your soul. In my cases, for 2 out of the 3 relationships, I had beautiful, beautiful beings who were supportive of my human, but not supportive of my soul. And it's not that they were, let's say, even anti, or not doing something, but they weren't taking the action that was needed for me, for my soul, for my journey on the boat on the Superconscious River. And when we continue to expand and understand the horizon, how things change, we can then get into situations where we start to see this and we start to question our own beliefs. Why would I think this? This person is so wonderful. Why would I want to break things off with them? Why would I not want to continue to be friends with them? These are all real questions. But I think in that moment of understanding that there is a difference of soul support and human support, it allowed me to understand my relationships even better. And that's what I want to share with you now. That you having a difference of support for your human. You might have someone who's very attentive, takes care of every single need. But from a soul perspective, there's not that growth or expansion that's needed, or support to do so. Or it might be reversed. There's things that you feel you need as a human in this experience, what you want to experience, and you're not. And that it's okay, that it is okay. No matter what it is. If it's a little less on this side, it's a 10 by 10 for soul, and it's a 5 by 5 and a 1 by 1 for human, or vice versa, or whatever it may be, that's okay. And as someone who has navigated some of her closest relationships, which resulted in setting them free, was it easy? No, it was not easy. It was very emotional. It was very challenging. I had to question so many of my beliefs. Like literally, I feel like every belief I have ever held was questioned through this process. I am now on the other side where I do not have these 3 primary committed relationships in my life. And I know it's not been easy for them, but I know in my soul, in my heart, in the depths of my being, that this set us all free. Am I still rooting for them? Heck yes. Do I still send them love? Abso-freaking-lutely. I do this practice every day where I send a white light pyramid to those that I love, that I care about, that have been in my life experience, who have done amazing things. This doesn't nullify anything. This doesn't nullify our journeys together, what we've gone through, what we've done. It does not. But it's about understanding and expansion, and that this world defines relationships in certain ways that are beautiful and wonderful. But not having the 2 keys for me is choice and freedom. To be able to choose and to have the freedom and space to choose. These are non-negotiables for me. And through expanding these relationships and navigating these relationships, I have learned and understood why they are so important for me. But I've also been brave enough to understand that's who I am. I spent so many years, invested so many years getting to know other people, getting to know the nuances and the things so that I can anticipate needs and help and be of service. But I never turned that energy back to myself. And that's what I realize where I dropped the ball for myself. And over this last, especially heavily over this last month, I have been diving deep into the trenches of who I am. And I'm taking all these little snapshots, my gene keys, my soul plans, my human design body graphs, my astrological charts, personality tests, the whole 9, anything I can get my hands on, to basically take all these individual snapshots of who I am and to layer them in and understand them and look at them and allow to see what resonates, to get to know myself. But I will say, because I got to know myself, I attempted to dive into this, understand this lovely river that we're traveling on. I then was able to see the 10 by 10 and the 5 by 5. I was able to illuminate the journey and where I was and where I was still yet to go, and host the conversations that allowed for those things to illuminate. And I just want to say out loud that wherever you are, with whoever, for whatever, in whatever commitment and depth of commitment you have, you are okay and they are okay. I'll tell you a secret. What I've learned of the universe is that we essentially take things really personally here. We feel like, oh no, you made a commitment to me 15 years ago and you have to do it. And this is the way it is. And you're holding feet to the fire and you're pressuring and you're focusing and you're forcing. That is not how the universe works. If suddenly there's a change, okay. If suddenly somebody wants to do something else, all right. Okay, yeah, might change my plan. But guess what? It might open the door to something that I wasn't seeing or I wasn't able to see because the door was closed before. But now it's open. There's movement. There's inertia. But for what it's worth, from my heart to yours, you have the permission within you to explore your relationships, to understand the energetic exchange, and understand that the sacred math of relationships does affect our energy, our trajectory, what we're doing, why we're doing. It affects all of those things. And I think in finally seeing that, finally understanding that, I have set myself free. I set myself free from holding myself to these things, to these benchmarks I held at times that I didn't even know I was doing it. And I also set those that I deeply love free. Because here is the thing, and this is the truth. I had conversations with all of them. And if this was a point that was a point of no return, it was a non-negotiable, it was not going to work, that was okay with me because I love them and I want what's best for them. And maybe for this next leg in their journey, I am not what's best for them. And it doesn't mean anything against me. It doesn't mean anything against them. It's looking at the bigger picture and having perspective. And that I'm so grateful for my guides, for them illuminating these things about relationships, the sacred math of understanding that there is a difference in your human being supported and your soul being supported. And of course, I wish upon all of you that every relationship you have supports you in all capacities that you desire. But if they don't, I pray and send you love and light for the courage to have the conversations, to open these dialogues up. Because both you and them deserve that. Because who knows, maybe in setting the connection free, you set y'all's souls free. You set y'all's humans free. And it flings the door open to destiny that has previously been closed. A lot to think about, but this being a core pillar of our experience here on Earth, I'm so grateful for understanding just a little bit more about these intricate things, energetic ties, energetic pathways that we call relationships.